Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining this session. My name is Sushan Rao. I'm joined with the host of Cloudera product managers and product experts to talk about the data lifecycle, everything you need from data warehousing, streaming, as well as machine learning on Azure. So if you're not so familiar with Cloudera, let me give you a brief introduction as well as what we mean by the data lifecycle. So, switch the screen. If you think about the kinds of use cases that drive business value, right, especially related to data, one of the things that you'll notice is that it requires all sorts of different kinds of use cases, right? So for example, here we're looking at a manufacturing company, and on the left, you see that all the different kinds of enterprise data that you can see. There's real-time and transactional. You could have it from connected production, connected supply chain, consumer, but you have all these silos of data and different kinds of data. And what we claim is that you need an enterprise data cloud with a data lifecycle that collects the information, enriches it, reports it, serves it, and predicts it, all with the base layer of security and governance in order to do the kinds of use cases that would be interesting. So for example, predictive maintenance or supply chain optimization or throughput optimization. These types of analytics are only possible if you have the full lifecycle. So what we mean by the full lifecycle is, there's 5 areas that we define as making the lifecycle. So first of all, there's streaming and data flow for ingesting and managing real-time data. There's data engineering for ETL and transforming data. Obviously, your core is the data warehouse to be able to create reports and run queries. If you're building applications, especially mission critical, you need an operational database. And lastly, right, because there's so much data and so hard to find the patterns within data, you need machine learning and AI to be able to make predictions off of it. So when you think about all of these different aspects, you need security and governance all throughout because it can't be different from one to the other. You need the same policies when you're collecting information to serving the data to making predictions. So that's what we've built with Cloudera Data Platform. It's got a couple of different interesting aspects to it. So the first is it's designed to run in your data center and private cloud, public cloud on Azure, and it gives you a hybrid cloud offering. Because you have data in all these different places, you need SDX. It's a consistent framework for providing security and governance to your data. You have next the data lifecycle, which is a set of multifunction analytics that run across the lifecycle to give you everything you need to run the most interesting business use cases. It's all built on Cloudera Runtime, the open source heart of the entire platform. And then lastly, when you have data in all these different places and all these users doing different kinds of analytics, how do you manage it all? And that's where Control Plane comes in. It provides data catalog, replication manager to be able to move data around, workload manager to understand the performance of queries and reports, and finally a management console that gives you a single pane view. So that's it for the slides. I'm next going to turn over to my colleague Deepak, who is going to give you a quick demo of Azure before we start answering questions. Deepak?
Hey, thanks, Sushant. All right. Okay, so what we see here, we're looking at the homepage of CDP, right? Which is our enterprise data cloud. So Sushant talked about cutting across the data lifecycle, and that's what we see on top. We have specific personas or specific user interfaces for data engineers, for people doing analytics.
But your screen is not showing right now.
Oh,
Can
it
you
isn't?
try it again?
Yeah, because hold on, let me do the share thing again. Well, oh, okay, I'm supposed to answer which. There we go.
Little detail. All right, now we see it.
Okay, let me full screen this. Okay, so this is the homepage of CDP, the Enterprise Data Cloud. What you see on top are all those data lifecycle points that Sushant talked about, right? Data engineering, data warehouse, operational database, machine learning. So that's how you enter different points in the data lifecycle. one thing Sushant talked about was this thing called SDX, right? And the one thing you don't see on our homepage are the words SDX. And that's important because SDX is this hidden layer of data governance, data protection, security that's throughout the product, right? If you want to take a look at this, we'll enter the management console, which is the admin interface. As you can see, this is running quite a number of environments. We'll pop into our Azure environment for a bit. So what's important to note is that the entire compute, the entire storage, all of this runs in your Azure subscription on your network using your security credentials and using virtual machines or Kubernetes clusters that are running in your account and your storage, right? So that's the backbone of the architecture of CDP, is that we are provisioning resources, but they're running in your account. This thing called SDX is what we call the data lake, a secure data lake. So it gets, you give us a storage location, and then we put up a couple of VMs around it to give a consistent layer of security. And other than the admin, most people aren't even going to notice this, because what most people are going to do is they're going to start using the compute experience that is the most relevant to them. So an analyst would go into a data warehouse, and they can spin up compute clusters, right? These are in the back end, these are Kubernetes clusters that spin up, scale down all the way to 0 when not used. But you spin up a virtual warehouse, and that's how you interact with the data lake. If you're a data engineer, you do the same thing. You don't actually go in and manage administrative clusters. You spin up a data engineering cluster, a virtual compute environment that scales up and scales down according to your needs. If you were an application admin or you were a database admin, you would go in and you would create a database. It's a very opinionated system. We don't ask you too many questions. We don't give you too many options, and that's for a reason. That's for simplicity, because the admin at any point can go in and make specific configuration choices for the end users. And it's very similar for machine learning workspaces, where you would go in and you would provision a machine learning workspace at the click of a button. Your data scientist doesn't see any of the compute behind it. They don't notice any of the storage behind it. What they see is an environment and an editor, either a notebook running on the server or an editor running on their desktop, which allows them to use a machine learning environment as they would natively. Again, behind this is a compute cluster. There are CPUs, there are GPUs, but the data scientist doesn't need to know about it. They just scale up and scale down as needed. Okay. And wrapped around all of this is the set of SDX services, which is available as what we call data catalog. And this is what your data stewards would use to go in and manage data sets, find data sets, discover them, tag them, look at their lineage, etc. Right? So that's, in a nutshell, that's CDP, where it's an enterprise data cloud that covers data throughout its data lifecycle, from its creation all the way to when you use it to provide business intelligence. And the product really has two personalities. One is the admin personality, which is all the control plane services that you see here. But we've invested a lot of time in creating these very specific, bespoke, we call them experiences for your end users, so that they can interact with the system without having to deal with the details of what goes on in the compute and storage side. And that was a quick demo, and I'll open it up for questions.
All right, folks. So we're getting some good questions come in. There's a couple things that, oops, we got the meeting chat showing up. All right, great. And looks like we got Michael Coase, our streaming and data flow expert, on as well. So let's start off. Some of the questions are, how does the CDP handle object storage and work with ADLS? Deepak, is that something you can address?
Yes. So for all storage comes from the cloud, right? So all storage is object storage. We use ADLS as your data lake. We provide a set of services around it so that you don't have to go individually configure access to each one of your end users. So CDP has a data translation or a layer which basically allows you to use your enterprise user gives them access to your data lake storage without having to deal with having to log into the cloud and set up credentials for it.
Excellent. All right. Looking through the list, here's a question on data science. David, what are the key problems that you see companies facing around their data science projects on Azure?
Yeah, thanks for that. So it's a great question, because what we generally see in terms of our things that our customers are running into, not even specifically just on Azure in terms of handling data science projects, but also across the board, is the difficulty of actually getting the hard work that the data scientists are doing and getting that out into production. And so, there's a lot of good tools that are in place for folks to be experimenting with different data science approaches, whether it's leveraging Spark, leveraging different libraries, etc. But the challenge is actually helping them to work through all the other boundaries to get their models deployed into production. And so there's a lot of capabilities that we have from a data platform perspective, as well as within machine learning on the Cloudera data platform, to help connect all those different pieces together. Because it's not just about the code, it's about managing your data, it's about getting things deployed and monitored in production, and accounting for the entire end-to-end flow. So
excellent. All right. Let's move on to streaming. So we got Michael here. Michael, what are the common streaming challenges you see today? And are they different from when you're thinking about streaming on-prem versus cloud?
Yeah, I think what many enterprises currently go through is just that switch over from a lot of batch-oriented workloads into more real-time oriented ingest workloads. So especially looking at people using Azure as their primary cloud provider, one recurring theme that we see is, how do I get my streaming data into ADLS, right? That's the first question that you have to answer. So I'd say streaming ingest into object stores is a common challenge that we see, and where Cloudera Dataflow on CDP can definitely help. And the second challenge is for enterprises that already have figured out that streaming ingest portion. They now want to go to the next level, and they want to do streaming analytics on that streaming data. So it's not any more about landing it in ADLS and then wait 30 minutes for your Spark job to process the data, but you want to get insights faster. And that's where technologies like Apache Flink that we offer as part of a CDP public cloud as well can really help you get these real-time analytics on the streaming data done.
Excellent. So let's look at some more questions that are coming in. There's a question: how is CDP different from Azure Databricks, which has Spark? David, do you want to start there?
Yeah, sure. So great question. So if you're focusing just on Spark, and if you're only looking at, how do I leverage Spark as a distributed framework for compute, then you might not see as many differences. If you're looking at the business problems that you're trying to actually address, whether it's a need to build an interactive application on customer churn, whether it's BI reports that need to be generated after crunching all of the finance data for the upcoming board report. If you look at things from an end-to-end standpoint, then that's where the Cloudera data platform really comes into play, because it's really the combination of all those different pieces where certain parts along the entire flow might use Spark, but if you don't have a solution for properly streaming in your data into your data lake, if you don't then have on top of that on the same platform the ability to run those transformations, but then how do you build everything else from there? That's really the end-to-end perspective that the CDP platform brings to the table.
There's also the issue of kind of hybrid cloud, being able to run the same kind of analytics on-prem and in public cloud, and then having kind of consistent security governance policies across both, right, David?
Yeah, that is entirely true. And so, while we do have a lot of our customers are running successfully on top of Azure in the public cloud, there are certain use cases that those customers have, whether it's for data privacy reasons, for general compliance, et cetera, that keep some of the data on premise. And so to have solutions that are in place where the different folks that are involved, whether it's the BI analysts, whether it's your folks that are writing your ETL scripts, et cetera, to be able to use the same experiences, but have that basically run regardless if it's on the public cloud on Azure or on premise, and to have that kind of consistency, that's extremely important to make sure that that can all happen. So,
excellent. Here's another good question. Can you also span on-prem data sources? Deepa, can you talk about data sets that are kind of, in a catalog on-prem? And then Michael, what about the kind of other question of moving data from on-prem to public cloud? Deepa, can you start first?
Yeah, I'll start first. I'll also answer half of the next question and then hand it over to Michael. Okay, so the idea is behind the hybrid data cloud is you should be able to put your data where it fits best, right? So SDX as a layer, you can get SDX in the public cloud, but we also have an SDX layer that spans the private cloud. So for example, with data catalog, you can start cataloging and analyzing and looking at the lineage of data sets that are residing either in CDP public cloud or in CDP private cloud. We have a solution called Replication Manager, which will help you move data from the private cloud into the public cloud, or we support any other data movement mechanism you may already have in place. So that's the whole point of the hybrid cloud is you put the data where it makes the most sense to consume, not where it makes the most sense to manage. Go ahead, Michael, over to you.
Yeah, so in addition to that, where the data flow suite of our products can really help building this hybrid cloud that Deepak just described, is that when you start having more and more sources and targets in the public cloud that you need to embed and join with your on-premises data sources, if you have an on-prem ETL system or something like that, typically what happens is you need to reach out to every individual point of these cloud services now and pull them into your integration flow. So what you can do with Cloudera Dataflow and specifically NiFi, you can run NiFi on premises and you can run it in CDP public cloud, and then basically create this pipeline between a public cloud and one on-prem, and just send all your data that needs to go from on-prem to the public cloud and vice versa through that pipeline. That makes it very, very efficient. And also, if you've ever tried to talk enough ports to cloud services, or even worse, if you want to have inbound connectivity from the public cloud to your data center, it's a long discussion. And with NiFi, using this pipeline approach, basically only have one port. All your data goes through there, managed through NiFi. So that's how we can really bridge that on-prem and public cloud world nicely.
Excellent. So this, I think the next question is just asking for a clarification. Is the data warehouse in the diagram supposed to be the source of the operational database in the diagram? And the answer is no, right? These are two different products used for two different needs. Data Mart, data warehouse is really about running queries, generating reports, right? You have your data in the data warehouse so that you can run these kind of massive reports. Operational database kind of does a different, solves a different problem, which is if you're building mission critical apps that are trying to give you almost a real-time view of what is happening, then that is what the operational database. So at least in the Cloudera world, when you talk about the data warehouse, it's really built on open source projects like Apache, Impala, Hive, Druid, Solar. When you're looking at the operational database, it's really based off HBase and Phoenix. All right, let's move on. So next question is, would the business rules and transformations exist in the virtual environment? I'm thinking of the equivalent of a data mart that would be used for reporting. Deepak, this sounds a little bit like an SDX type question.
Yes, so it is an SDX question. So, one of the things we're trying to do is, right, we're trying to separate the admin persona from the business or the user persona, right? What is the business? The business user doesn't want to know, is it an object storage, file storage? Is it secure? Is it not, right? I mean, they want to know that all those things are taken care of, right? So when you look at things like data warehouse or data engineering, the business persona gets the ability to turn on and compute on and turn compute off at the push of a button, right? It's the admin persona who has to deal with all of those issues around, is it secure, who has access, am I meeting my compliance goals, am I meeting my SLAs, etc., right? So but through achieving that separation of roles and through achieving, and from a user interface perspective, right, to creating these very bespoke experiences so that we're shielding the business user from all of the details. That's really the solution to the problem, right? They just need to know that the guarantees are being met without having to deal with them on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent. Let's move on. Next question. I think, David, this is for you. Data engineers rely on Python and Scala to write low-level code to perform ETL in Spark. Does Cloudera also rely on Scala, which has a steep learning curve, or are there other options?
Yeah, great question. So the short answer is that Cloud does not rely on Scala. However, through the machine learning experience that we have available on CDP, data engineers and data scientists can write code using any combination of Python, R, or Scala. So one of the core things that we firmly believe is to make it possible for any data engineer or data scientist that is writing this code to be comfortable in the environment that they're working in, to be able to do so using, the specific kernels that that they want to be able to use. So if you do have those data engineers are more comfortable using things like PySpark to be able to write those sort of ETL pipelines, and they're able to do so using Python. If you do have folks that are Scala experts, we make that directly possible as well. And so we have a lot of flexibility from that regard.
Excellent. Oh, Michael, I think we can't hear you. Try it one more time. Okay. We'll come back to you, Michael. So the next one I think is a little bit more of a philosophical question. So as a common theme during this Ignite is the term low code. With Power Apps and mostly Power BI, there's talk about democratizing building apps and data solutions. Do you agree that we should move building some data solutions to the business, or should we keep focusing on putting everything into the data warehouse? Or is there a solution that embraces both ideas? Deepak, do you want to start there?
Yeah, I want to start there. So the answer is absolutely, right. We completely support, call it low code, call it enabling the business. We completely support that, right? We're trying to build a platform that works with any persona, with any use case, in any, either in the admin side of the business or the business user. So we're trying to build a solution that embraces both ideas, as the question is answered, because we're trying to be a platform that is opinionated in how compute and storage are laid out, but very unopinionated in how you consume them, right? So we are very happy when somebody takes Power BI and connects to a data warehouse running in CDP, right? That's actually a use case for us. Right? We're not out there promoting that, SQL or Scala or R or Spark at the beginning and the end of how data warehousing or data engineering should be done. We're trying to embrace all of them.
David, from a data science perspective, kind of how is Cloudera helping the data scientists and kind of more the business side, use the data science capabilities in the platform?
Yeah, great question. So it's sort of twofold in terms of how we're approaching really democratizing access to insights is what it really comes down to. The first angle has to do with one of the products that we have called data visualization, or data viz, and that basically gives a drag and drop interface that is easy enough for business users to be able to create their own dashboards, their own applications, without even having to write a single line of SQL, for example. So we have that available, again, targeted for those dashboarding type requirements. Now, something else that we've also recently launched on the machine learning side of things are what we call applied machine learning prototypes. And those are effectively pre-packaged end-to-end projects that show, again, soup to nuts, how to get through an entire machine learning project with different approaches. And so we have, for example, if you want to learn how to leverage the platform for deep learning or for NLP uses or things along those lines, we have an entire catalog of these prototypes that are, in a couple of clicks, you can see how the entire end-to-end system works. And so that serves as an amazing starting point for any projects that you're running yourself, because you can specifically change up the underlying code to point at your own data. So.
Excellent. And then Michael, from a streaming perspective, how does CDP help folks, have a low code addressing streaming and real-time data?
Yeah, that's where I wanted to chime in on on David's answer and then on Deepak's. So glad to get to talk to it now. So NiFi, it offers you a graphical UI to build data movement flows. So Spark is a great tool for doing heavy transformations, aggregations, things like that. But what we see with a lot of our customers is that they use Spark for simple format conversions from Afro to Parquet or something like that. And if you're looking for something like that, you can use NiFi. You have a graphical UI to build your actual data flow, and that helps also with making it more accessible to more users.
Excellent. So just checking the time. I think we have time. Okay, it looks like we have to wrap it up. So folks, I want to thank you for attending this session. If this sounds interesting to you and you'd like to try it, we can provide you I think it's a 30 to 45 day free trial of CDP in your environment. So we call it Test Drive. So you can get hands-on product and try out some of these capabilities that Deepak, David, and Michael talked about. You can experience the full lifecycle because it's the full product running in your environment with your data. So if you're interested, I think you should see a message after this event on how to get access to that. And hopefully this has been educational and informative for you. Thank you for your time.